Welcome to Finance Made Easy. Yesterday, I talked about the evolution of China's financial market. Today, let's take a look at how the financial markets in Europe and the US evolved. It's widely known that there is quite a gap between China and the developed financial markets of Europe and the US. For example, in the US, the average person has 3 credit cards, while in China, it takes an average of 3 people to share 1 card. Another example is that the credit record in Europe and the US is very thorough. If someone defaults on a loan, they might be blacklisted for a long time. But in China, for instance, the founder of Pan-Asia was involved in debt disputes long ago, yet nobody knew about it, and he continued to deceive people in the financial markets for years. These phenomena easily lead people to believe that the European and American markets are naturally credit markets, and that Chinese people don't have a strong sense of credit. As I mentioned yesterday, behind every financial phenomenon and market, there's a historical evolution. Modern European and American financial markets were not always as mature as they are today. They gradually developed after the 11th century, beginning with an organization called the Knights Templar. Today, I'm going to explain how the European and American financial systems evolved from such an institution. First, let's understand what the Knights Templar was all about. Many people have heard the name Knights Templar from the movie The Da Vinci Code. Historically, this organization was real. It originally started as a military order. In the Middle Ages, Christian territories in Europe were conquered by Islam. In the 11th century, the Pope launched the Crusades, quickly reaching Jerusalem, the Holy Land for Christians, and opened it to pilgrims from Europe. The Knights Templar was established to protect these pilgrims. However, the members of the order soon realized that protecting pilgrims could be turned into a profitable business. The journey was long, and the pilgrims often carried large sums of money, making it unsafe. They needed a system for storing their valuables in distant locations. But at that time, Europe was fragmented into small kingdoms with strong barriers, so no single country could establish a cross-border system for financial custodianship. Only an organization with a strong presence across Europe, like the Knights Templar, could carry out this task. They found that running such a business was both convenient and very profitable. Pilgrims could deposit money in Europe and withdraw it in Jerusalem, making cross-border money transfers quite popular. Soon, this business expanded beyond protecting pilgrims and spread across all of Europe. Building on the custodial and currency exchange services the Knights Templar realized that financial services were the most lucrative business, so they expanded into managing royal crowns for the King of England, collecting taxes, managing royal debts and bonds, and even offering trust services to the nobility. Once they accumulated financial power, the Templars began lending money to warring kings when they needed funds. As a result, the Knights Templars' influence grew. By the 14th century, their services, such as remittances, deposits, loans, financial management, and payments, became widespread across Europe, not just among kings and nobles, but also among common people. By the 14th century, European society had developed a strong sense of finance, and the Knights Templar played the role of a bank, serving as the pioneers of European finance. So why was an institution like the Knights Templar able to develop in Europe, but not in China? This has a lot to do with the political and social environment in Europe at the time. Europe was in a long period of fragmentation. Just like in Game of Thrones, there were many lords, like Jon Snow, each ruling over their own territories. These smaller rulers didn't have the absolute authority and trust that the emperor in China had. They couldn't easily levy taxes or raise armies, because if they did, their subjects would simply move to another lord's land. So, if a lord wanted to expand through war, he had to borrow money. Since no one had absolute power to borrow money without paying it back, borrowing money had to follow a give-and-take system, which helped expand the Knights Templars' power. The political fragmentation in Europe left a gap in governance, and the Templars filled that vacuum. In this environment, even kings and nobles couldn't easily break promises or default on their debts. This wasn't because Europeans were more virtuous, but because no one had absolute power. There was a system of checks and balances, which created a network of credit relationships. This is very different from China, where only the emperor had credit, and the credit of the people was fragile, making it hard to form a broad credit network. After the 14th century, with the rise of powerful countries like England, Spain, and France, the influence of the Knights Templar began to decline. However, the political vacuum in Europe persisted, and other financial institutions started to rise and took their place. For example, the banking industry in northern Italy emerged and took over the role of the Templars, providing financial services to European nobles and commoners. By the 16th century, the stock and bond markets in the small northern European nation of the Netherlands began to grow, becoming a hub for European securities. In the 17th and 18th centuries, banking systems in England and France began to develop, with London's bond market quickly becoming the center of bond trading in Europe and the world. These financial activities continued the legacy of the Knights Templar and laid the foundation for the modern European financial system, eventually leading to the creation of what I call the banking and credit system of Europe. This system is the precursor to the financial markets we see in Europe and the US today. An interesting question is, the Knights Templar originated in Europe, but why is the US now home to the most developed financial market? Why did the modern financial system, which originated in Europe, become so successful in the US? This has a lot to do with the foundational principles of the United States. When the US was founded, it was a federal state made up of 13 colonies with strong independence from each other. This structure was very similar to Europe's situation at the time, so the 13 colonies easily developed a system of checks and balances in governance and a credit network. Interestingly, after the US Civil War unified the country, a unified market was formed, and the federal government then unified the currency as well. Therefore, the conditions in the US were perfect, combining China's centralization with Europe's decentralization. This allowed the US to quickly rise and become a financial powerhouse, making finance-based nation building part of America's DNA. This is one of the key differences between the US and other countries, and is the historical root behind the American miracle of the 20th century. From the Knights Templar to the Italian banking industry, to the Dutch securities market, to the banking systems of England and France, and finally to America's financial foundation. Modern European and American financial markets didn't develop overnight. They evolved gradually from a banking and credit system. And this process is deeply intertwined with the geographic and political environments of Europe and the US. The formation of a credit society in the West was determined by Europe's system of decentralized checks and balances. When you combine this with the evolution of China's financial system, as we discussed yesterday, you'll understand that history is a path-dependent process. Simply copying systems from other countries can lead to what the Chinese say. When oranges grow in the south, they're oranges. When they grow in the north, they're something else. As we all know, China's internet payment industry is highly developed now, with Alipay and WeChat Pay seemingly on the verge of dominating the globe. But we also know that internet payments rely on a financial system and technology. So, why did the world's most powerful internet payment systems emerge in a place where the internet was less advanced and the financial system was underdeveloped? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section. Let's discuss this together. And if you found today's content useful, don't hesitate to share it with your friends. This is Finance Made Easy, helping you gain a higher perspective and re-understand wealth.